Welcome everybody to Level Up, further resources and training opportunities for interns. I am Jamie Nyker, I'm the Legislative Affairs Associate at Issue 1. If you don't know, Issue 1 is a nonprofit based in DC that works to make the government and democracy more effective and representative. And one of the things that we've tried to do over the last couple of years is strengthen the way Congress supports its staff and its interns. Interns are crucial to the way that Congress operates. They handle a lot of the first level of contact with constituents, but they're not always given the trainings that they need to do that work. And so that is what this session is about, giving you guys the opportunity to seek out those resources if you want to sort of go above and beyond. So because we only have 20 minutes, I'm going to kick it off right away and get started with Patrice George, who is from the Congressional Research Service. You'll probably be seeing a lot of CRS throughout your time on the Hill because they're the primary source of policy research, nonpartisan research on the Hill. And she has some great resources to share with all of the interns, our prospective interns on this call. So kick it off, Patrice.
Thank you so much. And we wanted to say to each of you today, we're happy to be a part of this. We want to invite you to, as congressional interns, register for these programs that are on our crs.gov webpage. You'll often be able to see those throughout your internship, and we do cordially invite you to attend those. They are vital to what we believe to be a successful path for you as an intern to take.
To turn it over to Leanne, Leanne Brackett from the Capitol Visitor Center. Leanne worked in the Senate for 9 years on both personal and committee staff, so she knows a lot about what it takes to succeed in Congress. And she joined the Capitol Visitor Center in 2009 as a congressional liaison. And I'll let her tell you more about what that work entails and how it might intersect with you as interns.
Thanks very much. It's good to talk to all of you today. The Capitol Visitor Center, as Jamie said, opened in 2009. And on a normal year when we're open, about 2.5 million people come through the Capitol every year to see it. Unfortunately, right now, because of the pandemic, we are closed to public tours. However, the Senate side just last week has started allowing staff and intern-led tours of the Capitol. And you will find that lots of both House and Senate offices like to provide VIP tours for their constituents, and usually the tour guide is an intern. So we are offering online virtual Capitol tour training for Senate staff and interns right now, and there should be a schedule in your materials. On the House side, they have not started staff and intern-led tours yet. I think it could happen maybe in the spring if the pandemic subsides. But we are offering a special virtual Capitol tour that was developed especially for House staff and House interns, and that schedule should also be in your materials.
So next, I'm going to turn it over to Eric Jones, who's the Director of Research and Counsel at the Stennis Center for Public Service. Since 1988, when it was created, the Stennis Center has been an excellent resource for public service programs and development opportunities for congressional staff and interns. Eric, take it away.
Thank you, Jamie, and thank you all for having me here. As Jamie mentioned, I work at the Stennis Center for Public Service, which is part of the legislative branch, so we're a congressional agency. And since our mission is to promote public service at kind of throughout the country, we have a ton of different programs, but the one that's probably the most important for the purposes of this program or this session is our Stennis program for congressional interns, which is a bipartisan, bicameral program designed to enhance a normal congressional internship by explaining the unique position that an intern kind of plays in Congress as an institution. And so what we normally do is take about 30 interns throughout the Hill, House, Senate, Democrat, Republican, personal or committee office, and we try to get them to meet a senior congressional staffer every week to discuss major things that you might not really get a lot of chance to kind of dive into as an intern, like the appropriations process or communications or oversight, just general things that Congress does that as an intern it's good to know, but you don't always get to be taught it. And so I think Jamie has a link to our website, which has the info for applying and a little bit more info on the program itself, but it'll run through March 4th through April 8th, and it's one day a week, 2-hour session. So it's a really cool experience to both network and get to meet someone that's got a ton of experience that you might not otherwise get to meet. So thank you.
Let me tell you, as somebody who's trying to, work through the appropriations right now, I really wish that I had gotten training on that when I was an intern. So that's great that you guys are doing that. So last but definitely not least, we have Shanna Devine, who's the inaugural director of the House Office of the Whistleblower Ombuds. Shanna has spent her life advocating for whistleblowers, and she and her team at the Office of Whistleblower Ombuds do really phenomenal work training House interns and staff on how to protect whistleblowers. You might be thinking, if you're an intern or prospective intern on this call, what do whistleblowers have to do with interns? But you would be surprised, and I'll let Shannon tell you more about that.
Thanks, Jamie. That's a perfect introduction. We'll get to that point. But first, I just want to thank you, Issue One, as well as PopVox, really just Anne and Marcy and the whole team for the tremendous amount of work that you put into organizing the Internapalooza. It's just really impressive and glad to be a part of it. Now, before I discuss kind of our office and our services, we need to establish a little more who whistleblowers are, right? So these are individuals who are exposing some type of threat to the public interest. We may see them through headlines like the Facebook whistleblower who disclosed that the company was withholding information about how their own platform can harm children, right? We remember this, it's come up and it's been a very bipartisan issue. Or maybe we're looking at something like an individual disclosing some type of government fraud that they're privy to. There are a lot of different circumstances where whistleblowing can come up, but what's so unique about this and kind of sensitive about this is more often than not, these individuals, they just think they're doing their jobs, and their disclosures may not always make headlines, but the impacts can really be life-changing for them and potentially for the public. Very often whistleblowers are treated as if they've committed a crime or exposing a crime. And in those circumstances, they're likely to reach out to their member of Congress, maybe after they've already experienced retaliation and they want some support in fighting that retaliation, or maybe they're trying to get the evidence to the relevant oversight committees. Whatever the circumstances may be, that's where your experience with them may come into play. Let's say you're working in a front office and you're answering the calls from constituents, and before you know it, something sounds like it may be a whistleblower issue, but you're not quite sure, or you don't know exactly what steps to take to help advise this individual accordingly. That's where we come in. That's why our office was established. We're here as a nonpartisan support office within the House to really advise, staff on best practices when you're working with whistleblowers, maybe those from the public or the private sectors. So Jamie mentioned our training. That's been already highlighted in Internapalooza, and I'll go through that further as helpful. We also have public resources on our website. I just want to bring your attention to. I think one will be in the chat. You should have received it, but it's our infographic on basic steps to take when you're having that initial potential call with the whistleblower. Key questions, key information to get down, and then kind of internal protocols that you can go through to vet the disclosures further. So that's just a sampling, and most of our resources are on our website. I'll include a link to that and kind of leave it there for now. Thanks again for this opportunity.
Great. Thanks, Shanna. That was a really helpful overview. I think I had to take a call like that when I was an intern. I got to say, it was pretty scary not knowing quite what to do. So I'm glad these resources exist. So now's the time where we're turning over to our Q&A. We have 7 minutes left. So please put your questions in the chat if you have any. And let me just, before we do that, share with everybody the big home for all the resources, many of which were just discussed here. That's on the Internapalooza website, which is run by PopVox. So if you're looking for resources, that's so just to get it started while we're waiting for questions to trickle in. Patrice, I think you already started to address this one, so maybe you have thoughts here. But what are some of the trainings that interns can expect to get from their offices? And what are some of the skills or trainings that you think they should seek out on their own? And that's a question for all of you guys in any order.
Well, one training that sticks out in my mind is to inquire about writing courses. It would be good if you could ask your intern coordinator about seeking out classes that the House or Senate may offer on writing. And you may also ask the coordinator to, suggest some training that they think you should take. We want to search out the Congressional Quarterly, how it, but as this said, if you could refer to our Pathway to Success, CRS does have some training that they can offer you as well. But inquire, be tenacious. That's what I would suggest you do.
I mean, I'd like to echo Patrice on writing. It's not so much that people are bad at actually writing words down on a page. It's trying to take a ton of information and distilling it into something that someone that's very busy can read very quickly. And that's a very different skill than I think a lot of people are used to going through like college and learning how to write that way. So being proactive there and trying to get examples from your office if they have them, or asking for advice is probably the best way to get that.
Yeah.
I'll chime in here, and it's going to be a bit of a plug for our office, but I would just encourage folks, whether you're interested in going into potential kind of oversight on Capitol Hill, or maybe working on policy reforms, or even being a constituent representative for a member's office. Taking our training and kind of learning those fundamental best practices for working with whistleblowers is a skill set that's going to be very transferable. Jamie had mentioned it. Very often this comes up whether you're in a member office or a committee, where you're working with constituents or working on oversight, whistleblowers are relevant. So we've developed our best practices training, which provides kind of that foundational overview, but we also have a learning path for kind of quick tips when you have an initial intake call with a whistleblower, key practices for maintaining their confidentiality, or what retaliation looks like. So I would just encourage you to check those out. And I'm also going to take a moment to pass on some key tips that our fellow provided, that he shared with me, that I think are really just valuable for interns as you're navigating this field. And some of them that the folks here have touched on, my fellow panelists. But one is just to acknowledge that you may be coming in through a virtual environment, and you're probably working some difficult hours. So try to create that comfortable workspace and kind of that routine that works for you and prioritizes self-care however possible. And one of the ways you can do that is to just tap into those existing resources that are in the House or in the Senate. And one of those resources I'm just going to acknowledge is the role of the Office of Employee Assistance. They have, free access to things like calm meditation apps or other wellness and guidance activities that really we can all benefit from. So that's just that self-care piece. In terms of networking, stay connected whenever possible. Staff associations are explicitly developed for that purpose, and it can be really helpful in this virtual environment. For instance, the Modernization Staff Association, which I know Pop Fox works with, they've developed a helpful virtual guide that you can plug into. And then going back to some of the earlier comments, ask a lot of questions and be proactive, communicating to your boss what you need to succeed in your role. And remember that we as an office remain a resource for you through our different services. So I'll leave it at that.
That's great. Thanks, Shanna. I guess this might be the last question we have time for, but obviously the reality of the situation is that most interns are going to be working during the pandemic. Many of them may be remote. I'm curious how you guys think that impacts the skills that interns need, how it changes the calculus of what they should be seeking out.
I'm gonna acknowledge our fellow panelists, CRS, and just reiterate, when you're working virtually or from the House in person, They couldn't be a more invaluable tool from our perspective in terms of the wealth of research and knowledge that you can tap into and access. And, you can reach them by email. So you don't have to be in person to communicate. They're super responsive by phone too. So that's just one resource that as congressional staff, we have unique access to. Unfortunately, our civil society partners don't, but we do. So I'd encourage folks to use it whenever possible. We've really benefited as an office from it.
That's great. Thanks, Shanna. Okay, everyone. I think that's all the time we have. I hope this was helpful. Thanks, everyone.